Yes. So a warm welcome and very good morning to you all. And thanks for coming in this heavy rain for this event. So I welcome you all for this launch of One Health Initiatives at SBV by MGM ARI, Mahatma Gandhi Medical Advanced Research Institute, in collaboration with MGM CRI, in association with the Global Alliance of Pandemic Preparedness and Response, APAR. This is under the team Human and Veterinary Medicine Practitioners Interface, a need for synergy. So I all welcome, and I welcome our Vice Chancellor, Professor Prajja sir, and our Vice President, Dr. S.R. Rao sir, and external experts, Dr. Hoti sir and Banureka ma'am, and the internal experts, clinical experts. So now, I would like to welcome Dr. Rao sir to conduct this event. Thank you.
First of all, a warm welcome to all of you. In fact, I'm very happy to see our Vice Chancellor, who himself has a lot of insight into One Health, being a parasitologist, and Dr. Hoti and all other doctors who have assembled here. Actually, One Health concept is almost a decade old, but activity started only some 9 years ago when SARS, MARS, and these things came. There was always a confusion, what is One Health? So then there was a huge stakeholders congregation by WHO, I call it, for understanding. It is called OIE, it's a WHO equivalent for animals. So they consulted for almost 4 or 5 years. And the definition is there in everywhere. If you put just One Health, the first one to flash definition is from OIE. The other one, which is more important, is WHO, OIE, and FAO. They came together and made a tripartite agreement, which actually implements lots of programs in the world. If you go to US or Canada, most of the institutions and universities have somebody to deal with One Health nowadays. And in the University of Davis, they have started One Health Commission, which actually takes into account all the activities of the globe, unless, of course, somebody has to register, so that they are all put in a repository. So show it to people, because everybody has their own inputs to provide depending upon the ecological zones and the ecosystem that they have. Zoonotic diseases are not just local. They are regional, they are national. In fact, they are all global. So therefore, One Health is not just one by one somebody's health. It is everybody's health. So therefore, the One Health Commission has this concept of pooling almost all global resources. And particularly in India, what happened, it was all talked about. And in 2018, me and Dr. B.N. Ganguly, Nirmal Ganguly, we have participated in one of the meetings abroad. Then we thought, why don't we start one? So in 2019, we had the international conference on One Health, along with Penn State and many other universities from US. 28 countries participated. The deliberations went for 3 days. And then a One Health Delhi declaration was made. Unfortunately, what happens is when you make these declarations or agreements, anything, there should be somebody to spearhead and implement. So there are 10 commandments in that agreement which were not implemented by anybody. So they came, they ate, they went. So what happened? One of the recommendations was to establish a global agency or global momentum to also supplement the efforts of the One Health Commission. Then it happened that the 2019 onwards, the COVID came. And naturally, COVID engulfed every idea. COVID dominated. But COVID also gave lots of messages. One of the biggest messages is Zoom. The Zoom connection, for example, there are about people are going on joining on the Zoom to listen to all of us. The other important thing is the One Health has been strengthened further. There are all stories about whether it has come from bat, because many coronaviruses come from bat. Today we'll hear from various speakers, including our Vice Chancellor, who took a lot of interest in giving his own thought process on One Health. All these stories about how zoonotics are, what type of pathogens are, how they transmit, particularly for the students. You know, what happens is in future is not that bright. Maybe for career it's okay, but there's lots of things that are going to happen, which I will not tell again because there are lots of stories being told in this particular small session. So you will see that as we grow, whether it is temperature, climate, weather, deforestation, floods, rains, or pathogens, pandemics, outbreaks, epidemics, everything is going to challenge us. It is not just doing some education, but it is also important that we have innovative thinking process. Therefore, we did a small effort to see, on the request of our one of the scientists in MGMRI, Abhijit, that why don't we put one posters competition? And we had about 20 posters. I'm glad to see some of them are online and some of them are offline. But there are some original thought processes which are put by the nursing faculty students, and they will be, of course, rewarded as we go by. Finally, today we have made a program in such a way that we'll have first a small 5 minutes video made especially for this purpose, which will be released in YouTube and globally on concept of One Health, reiterated. The second one is we'll have our talk by keynote address by Dr. Parija on One Health. Probably he will touch upon one area where many of the One Health people don't touch, that is parasitology. People always go for pathogens, brucellosis, bacteria, and that this, but not parasites. So that is one area. The second thing is we'll have a very good speech by Soumya Swaminathan, which was recorded, the message from WHO. After that, we'll have a video recording speech, because otherwise you have to do this in the night. Daytime people don't come, so night it will be difficult. So the second talk is by Peter Hudson. Peter Hudson has spent his life how pathogens and parasites come from wild animals and wild environments and then spill over into domestic animals and humans. The word spillover is the key to One Health. Actually, they spill over mean they just spill over like this by accident, by environment, by many other factors. Peter Hudson is a very old and eminent professor, and he will enjoy his talk, even though it is only for 7 minutes. Then afterwards, we have a message from one of the founders of Global Alliance for Pandemic Preparedness, Dr. Kai, who is also in the Rockefeller Foundation. And he will be giving about a new dimension nowadays being thought, how climate change affects the infectious diseases. Many people in the maybe IVRC also know that the migration of some of these mosquitoes going to North Africa and others because of temperature changes, dengue becomes a problem, maybe even in Europe also in future. There are a lot of migration of insects carrying viruses are happening. So future is although bright, it is also bleak. So we should be very prepared. And let us see after that, it's a very, very favorite topic of me to bring together the veterinarians and also the medical faculty to see what is their cross talk, whether each understand each other. If what happens when somebody gets a brucellosis, how the medical doctor treats. And we have some very nice people. We have Dr. Gill joining from Ludhiana. He is it's the only place where you have a public health clinic, where you have veterinarian and medical doctor together. And then we have Dr. Oti and then Dr. Madam, I just don't get Dr. Banreka from Public Health, River, the veterinary college here, and also Dr. Dinkar Raj, who is from the Tamil Nadu Veterinary University, and Dr. Tirumurugan, who is also a project director of Translation Research Platform for Veterinary Biologicals. So these people are also interacting with our doctors from MGMCRA particularly, and from the pediatrics, the head of the department, and Dr. Hanifa from General Medicine, Dr. Palnivel from Pulmonology, Dr. Surendran from Infectious Diseases. So that will be a show where we will find how the crosstalks takes place, whether each understand other. I also welcome Professor Jairaj. I see it here. Professor Jairaj, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
I will request you after all the speeches to have one or two observations from you. Please wait till that time. Thank you very much. Yeah. Now I welcome with Praveen. Can you show the video? Abhijit, it is there. Yeah. This was basically made for this purpose.
Today, we live in a highly interconnected and increasingly globalized world. Technology is reshaping the geographical landscape and increasingly dissolving physical borders. For the world of today and the future, global warming and climate change has become inadvertent reality. The average temperature is rising at a rapid rate, bringing catastrophic destruction to all habitat, flood, forest fire, polar ice melting. All these events are impacting lives in a very concerning way. Our exposure to wildlife has become frequent. We are living side by side with animals. A change in climate is pushing disease-carrying vectors across newer geographies. Events like these are leading to an unavoidable situation where disease carried by one is easily and more frequently transmitting to others. Human getting infections from animal, or an animal getting infections from human. What fears is that it only takes one infected human or animal to start a chain reaction. One infected individual pass it to surroundings. People carrying disease carry it to any corner of the globe with no time through international travel. Likewise, one infected animal easily migrate, cross the national borders and infect the neighbors. This can happen anytime, anywhere. A busy city, a remote jungle in Africa, a hospital, even from our home. For instances, the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Suddenly, one previously undiscovered virus appeared from the wild and started infecting from the city of China. It turned to be a pandemic of 21st century that almost paralyzed the world. We almost lost all known fabrics of life. It is not a single case Remember the SARS outbreak in 2002, MERS in 2012, Ebola in 2014-16, Lassa in 2022, and many such more. In all that instances, these events are leaving behind death, destruction, and immense damage to health and beyond. A huge stress on healthcare system, economic breakdown that takes ages to recover. The occurrence and impact of known and novel disease outbreaks are likely to increase further in coming time. And we cannot afford repeating the sad history. With the lesson learned from the past, present, and for the future, humanity is continuously seeking and adopting greater response and preparedness strategies against new, emerging, and re-emerging infections from any origin and break the chain, prevent outbreak and pandemics. Heart of it is One Health. One Health recognize the health of humans, domestics, wild animals, plants, and the wider environment are closely linked and interdependent. Health of people, animals, and ecosystem are being collectively studied and dealt by forging strong multidisciplinary and multisectorial collaboration. These are opening new avenues of scientific advancements and a whole new approach of clinical management. A greater thirst in research, innovation with new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, high throughput sequencing is significantly improving our capacities in disease detection, forecasting, and reporting, vaccines and diagnostic development, and many more countermeasure tools. Today, government of several nations, international organizations like WHO, OIE, FAO, and institutions across globe are joining together to develop One Health strategy for global health security and better health outcome at national and transnational levels. Like the global consolidations and actions on One Health, SVV have been very active to constitute an international alliance with partners across nation and beyond. With like-minded scientific groups, international bodies, key national ministries, the alliance are promoting global South-South and North-South engagement for effective sharing of lessons, take mutual benefits, and create a holistic approach for better disease response and preparedness under One Health system. This is One Health that evolves beyond the current provincial approaches to deal with healthcare challenges to a holistic, transdisciplinary default way of doing business. One Health believes when health of all is overlapped, our effort to secure safe, adequate food, water supply, our effort to protect the environment, and our effort to prevent, detect, and control infectious diseases must overlap as well. As a multidisciplinary and multisectoral capacity under One Health, we should act together by sharing and exchange. We should build strong research and development platform. We should build next generation manpower and infrastructures. That is how we will be better prepared for the future health threats. There is one world, one connection, one life, and so One Health. Welcome to One Health. Together we build.
Now, I request our Vice Chancellor, Subhash Chandra Parija sir, for keynote address.
Yeah, this one. Correct. Good morning. Esteemed Dr. S.R. Rao, Vice President SBB, esteemed resource persons and experts for today's wonderful celebration of One Health Day being observed here, and dear participants of today's program on One Health Day. At the outset, on behalf of our university, Balaji Vidyapith, popularly referred to as SBB, on my behalf and behalf of our Chancellor, Sri M.K. Rajgopalan, I extend a hearty welcome to you all for your participations in today's celebration of One Health Day. I take this opportunity to thank sincerely, in particular, Dr. S.R. Rao for having initiated such an activities that gives a forum, gives a platform for the One Health concepts, which has been gaining popularities, being widely accepted since last decade, but in last 3 to 4 years, particularly in the Indian scenario. I must thank him for giving this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on parasitic zoonosis and One Health. So I like to take around 20 to 25 minutes. First, I'll give a talk, briefly point about background, highlighting the impact of climate changes to infections, both bacterial, viral, parasitics, and fungals. And particularly, since by my profession, I am a medical parasitologist, I little deliberate more on the parasitic disease, particularly zoonotic parasitic disease, how its effects, drives, and consequences. And in this context, our universities, Sri Balaji Vidyapith, SBB, what is our vision, how to intervene and support and facilitate SB One Health initiatives. And while I do that, there are many aspects, components that could be discussed, but I focus mostly on diagnostics, sharing some of our experience and facilities in our universities. And this 21st century, seeing a lot of change. I was born in 20th century. Everything is changing. The way I was brought in 20th century, now the way I'm seeing 21st century, in every sphere of life, in your personal, social, academic, curriculum, everywhere is changing. And that's being, in fact, influenced by the changes in the scenario, particularly I'll emphasize in the diagnostic scenario, what we used to do in our 19th century, 20th century, now what we are planning to do 21st century with help of mobile. And especially, I like to, particularly my young colleagues who are making a professions, who like to make a career in future, how this new technology, deep technology will help in better specific diagnosis of infectious disease, including parasitics. As a wonderful video we saw, which has been nicely summarized, I just re-emphasize the infections worldwide. There are no doubt this 21st century has been seen a rapid resurgence of newer infections, starting from Ebola, SARS, Zika virus, and most recently, pandemic COVID 2019 that has affected each and every one of us and has brought disasters to the different components of our life. So in essence, when we visualize that this COVID-19 pandemic may not be end, there will be more and more such pandemics maybe in future for which we need to prepare more. As Dr. Rao had mentioned clearly, I need not go into detail about the concept of One Health. One Health means, as for CDC definitions, One Health recognizes that the health of people is closely connected to the health of animals and our shared environment. It has got three important components: humans, animals, and environment. If humans' health is strong, animal health is good, and we live in a good environment, obviously we do have a better One Health. That is the essence and the basic concept of the One Health. So these three triangles, if we have to strengthen, then the quality of the health will definitely better. So human health cannot be protected unless we take the care of environment or we take the care of the animals. Hence, more rational approach is to look into the environmental impact on diseases. Pathogenesis could shed light on approaches for securing One Health for the world. Now, regarding the effects of climate changes in pathogens, there has been climate changes that we talk about global warming that has led to change in rainfall, extreme events. We face storms and fires. So what happens? More rain, more flood, more water, more contamination by all the infectious pathogens possible. And if we have a source of water that is more contaminated, obviously we are at risk of acquiring more waterborne disease, either parasitic, bacterial, or virals. Hence, effects are increase in water and foodborne diarrhea diseases, increase and expansion of mosquito-borne infectious disease. As Dr. Rao was mentioning, mosquitoes are migrating. We are migrating, and all of us are migrating. Mosquitoes are also migrating. And because mosquitoes are migrating, wherever they migrate, they cause the disease there. In next slide, few slides, I'll share some of my impressions on this. What are the components of driving parasite adaptation and response? Parasites, the way our human society adopting in 19th century, 20th century, 21st century, in the same essence, parasites have been also trying to adopt. They are adopting to be self-sustainable, to survive, so that they can invade humans and animals as well. In past environment, parasites have evolution. History is there, large-scale environmental changes, that is glacial warming events, and environmental climate oscillations, and oscillations of Pacific decades of oscillators, PDO, that has brought a change to the parasites, both intrinsic and extrinsics. Now, in this 21st century, there has been a lot of change in terms of abiotic, and so much changes, that also making pathogens to adapt themselves. Pathogens are changing, becoming to be more virulent, to adopt newer environment, to adopt newer circumstances. And these are the responses which affects on the host, vector, and parasites. That has contributed to change in transmission dynamics, altered host pathogen interactions, parasite drug resistance, genomic plasticity, transgenerational effect, and tissue pathogens. When combined together, it leads to new geography, higher pathogenicity, alter speciation. Hence, it is the humans and animals. They are at the receiving end, and they suffer most from the disease. I just this has led to global footprints of parasites, and there are 10 hotspots. Parasites in the form of neglected tropical disease are clustered around 10 hotspots across the world, with a potential for larger outbreaks to pandemic. One of the hotspots in our country. Now, I'll just give an example of global footprint of malaria. It is because of climate change. Climate change is bringing unprecedented shift of pathogen transmissibilities, survival, and existence in new geographical areas because of climatic changes. And now we talk of global warming. Now we parasitologists talk about global warming, changes in human helminthine infections, soil transmitted helminthine infections like ascariasis, hookworm infections, other intestinal nematodes emerge as the dominant infections in Africa. Ascariasis remains the dominant infection of warming in Asian megacities in some parts of our country. And when we talk about trematode infections, declining of schistosomiasis, schistosoma caused by Schistosoma hematobium, Schistosoma mekongii, Schistosoma mansoni, and so on in Africa, which was one of the hotspot of schistosomiasis, is decreasing due to shrinking of snail host habitats, droughts, hence less water bodies from their multiplications, and successful human interventions, and likely decline of Opisthochiasis in Asia. And when we talk of Filaria nematode infections, predicted expansion in range and breeding seasons for mosquito insect predators, and risk between global warming and other Onchocerciasis. I'll just take a few minutes to share some of my thoughts, particularly on the climate. Climate change, global warming. First, I'll give an example of the situation that occurs in our country, India. 5 decades back, when in the hot, dry areas of Rajasthan, Government of India successfully started for the Indira Gandhi Dam project. That was a great contributions that brought prosperity, growth in these areas because of connectivity to water. But subsequently, after 5 to 10 years of that, there was a sudden rise in the spot of these mosquitoes, the vectors that cause malaria, cellular malaria. It happened for 3 important causes. Because that area, which was so dry hot, no vector can survive. The moment the canal water irrigation became very strong, so the malaria, the mosquitoes which are under pressure in these conventional areas, they started their habitation there. And they transmitted malaria. And the most susceptible people were the old age people who never had experienced malaria in their while they are inhabiting Rajasthan. So there was a large number of cases of cultural malaria, people dying of the disease because of no previous immunity of those people there. Second example, I'll give on schistosomiasis in Egypt and South African countries. Schistosoma hematobium, a trematode that is a causative agent of visceral schistosomiasis, and the classical manifestation is hematuria. So it was nicknamed as the menstruating men, because they would be just having a lot of hematuria. And that was classical because the great Nile liver, these vectors host snails are multiplying, people are taking the bath, people are coming in contact with the water, and most people are infected by the Cercaria through the skin, and they're getting the disease. But because of the successful interventions, successful control, and reduction in the cell control, when this schistosomiasis fell down to a large extent, but the parasite, what he has to do? They migrated to some cold areas, which are not inhabited or seen by the schistosomiasis. And there, migrating newer areas, they started their habitations and they focus for causing infections. That is what alter the distribution and abundance of the intermediate host snail and the schistosome parasites resulting in a shift in disease dynamics and transmission to people in the newer areas. And another example can be of climate adaptation of the parasitic nematodes. The effect of environment that has been studied on the L3 of Prostongylus, that's a parasite of veterinary importance, depends and has been affected by this climate changes. Now, in this context of newer emerging infections, One Health concept of taking all the stakeholders into confidence, humans, animals, and environment. What is our role, SBB? And we do believe SBB as a leader in innovations. That is what we have initiated, One Health initiative to mobilize action in this area. We have just been planned to approach this One Health initiatives in different areas, like One Health awareness, the way we are organizing today. Because unless we are aware, unless we know the importance of One Health, we cannot do further. And second is the newer diagnostic modalities. This will be one of the most important component of the SBB initiative on the One Health, because we are planning to be stronger in diagnostic capabilities, adopting newer technologies and strengthening the formal diagnostics. And SBB will always encourage for capacity buildings, and our most important is multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary collaborations. This is in essence reflects the National Education Policy 2020. National Education Policy 2020 says it should be multidisciplinary, multi-institutional. And the way we are carrying out the research in last century earlier, and just inside the four walls of your lab or in a department, that trend should be dissolved. We should collaborate not only among your health science faculty, among technologists, among biologists, among all those things. That is what SBB also has initiated, a School of Biological Science, to go into deep research on the basics of the biology and integrating multidisciplinary research. Hence, as I mentioned, the need for research and innovations in parasitic disease, zoonotic, or other conditions. There are many areas for diagnostics, study molecular pathogenesis, to study genomic plasticity and speciations, and epidemiology in relation to climate adaptations and medical countermeasures, so on. But I just focus on diagnosis. What are the diagnostic methods and what are the opportunities? Why we must focus on diagnosis? Because in health sciences, environment, clinicians need a strong support by availability of a strong diagnostic kits. So accurate identification of the causative organism play a very important role in differential diagnosis, definitive diagnosis. Obviously, that favors better medical treatment and outbreak control in case of outbreaks or epidemics. This also serves as a surveillance tool to improve human health issues. I'll just try to summarize few advances in diagnostics by two components. One is deep technology, that is pre-deep technology is, and one is deep technology era. I'll explain what we mean by deep technology and pre-deep technology. When we talk of pre-deep technology area, you remember 19th century parasitic infections were diagnosed just by examination of the adult worm, by other things in the stool, other body fluids. That's the first thing to start. It has its own disadvantage. Then with the invention of microscopy, light microscopy, parasite diagnosis was strengthened by diagnosis by different stages of the parasites in the blood, stool, urine, and so on. Then follow the culture. In certain, like Entomia histolytica, Giardia, it was used, but not to that great extent. But the greatest contributions that was there is the role of immunodiagnosis that really helped, and still also is one of the most important components for immunodiagnosis of many infectious diseases, including the parasitic disease. But just in the last century and beginning this century, molecular technology, molecular diagnostic is coming in a big way. You ask any layman, they'll tell you real-time PCR because of COVID pandemics. Earlier, even 1 decade back, it was confined to the few labs, and real-time PCR or conventional PCR was a difficult thing for common people to appreciate. This has been changed. This was a pre-diagnostics, deep areas. Just I'll tell you some example that why molecular diagnostic is become one of the key component for diagnosis of many parasitic diseases like amoebiasis. I'll share some of my thoughts, my contributions, which we have done in Entamoeba histolytica. We know Entamoeba histolytica is the congenital of parasitic disease called amoebiasis. We also know that Entamoeba histolytica has similar look-alike amoeba, like Entamoeba dispar, Entamoeba moskowski. Means these three species, they are cysts and mostly trophozoites. If you see in the ordinary microscope, they look similar. You cannot tell whether this Entamoeba histolytica or Entamoeba dispar or Entamoeba moskowski. What it means? It has a great implications because it has been proved conclusive in doubt that we call Entamoeba histolytica is the pathogenic species because it is pathogen, it causes diarrhea and dysentery. Whereas its look-alike partners, Entamoeba dispar and Entamoeba moskowski, they are non-pathogens. They are commensals. They don't cause any harm, mostly to the humans, though few reports are coming now. Hence, traditionally what we do in a clinical setup, if a clinician suspects to rule out the Entamoeba histolytica etiology, they recommend for the microscopy. And by microscopy, what we tell Entamoeba histolytica is erroneous result because the so-called Entamoeba histolytica may be dispar or moskowski. Now this is described Entamoeba bangladeshi, which are non-pathogenic. In the situations, only the molecular diagnostic can help in accurate and reliable specimen. Means we have done multiplex PCR, all those things by which we can differentiate in a specimen if that amoeba is Entamoeba histolytica. If it is Entamoeba histolytica, it needs treatment by metronidazole and so. If it is Entamoeba dispar, Entamoeba moskowski, or Entamoeba bangladeshi, it does not need any treatment like that. There are hundreds of examples in which molecular diagnostics playing a very crucial and important role in specific diagnosis of that. But having told that, though molecular diagnostic has a strong future, with more research and development, we have to address many solutions because there are many impeding factors. One of them being running cost. It's expensive. It requires a laboratory setup. And sometimes most of the kits are not available for many parasites. And we need a trained technical manpower for demonstration of these parasites by molecular diagnosis. Hence, there is a scope that with more research and development, the running cost will be low, dedicated training and capacity building will be required. Technology like LAMP, a non-PCR-based DNA amplification strategies are emerging as promising point of care technology and may witness further growth and adoption worldwide. So in essence, to summarize, before deep technology, pre-deep technology included gross morphology, microscopic, culture, and immunological. Gross and microscopics were low cost, suitable for research work settings, and culture was time consuming, labor intensive, whereas moleculars are unquestionable, sensitive and specificity, and less interpretation based. Now, in essence, we have now the deep technologies. Deep technologies we visualize as a fast processing, field use, and zero complexity, and unquestionable, sensitive, and specific with zero interpretation bias. And this is what I wish share. What do you understand by the deep tech? Deep tech is nothing but deep technology that is conglomerating science, engineering, and designs. These are the three combined components that gives rise to deep technologies like advanced science in the form of artificial intelligence, engineering, in talk of the engineering and design, bioscience, and so on. So this deep technology now is coming in a big way for the improved and better diagnosis of the infectious disease, including parasitic and pathogens. To summarize, deep technologies takes three important components like advanced science, engineering, and designing. Integration of all these three components, that goes to integration of deep technology for better diagnosis. Deep technology-based parasitic diagnosis has immense future. I am assuring you that this technology will be the technology of the future after 1 or 2 decades. Because it has got multiple advantages. It will not only help for single parasite detections, this will help for multiple parasite detection in case of the body fluids. And not only detects the parasites, but it can detect parasite stage detection, different stages. And even we can classify eggs of the nematodes by these deep technologies. Of course, this is a technology new, being evaluated, and recently it has been mostly focused to malaria parasites, human intestinal parasites like Ascaris. And just to give you an example, how in this process, when our life, everything moving around the mobile, 80% of life is mobile. Anything, if not in a mobile, we can go beyond that. We expect that by deep technologies, by just mobile phone, we can diagnose the malaria parasite detection in the blood smears. Suspect malaria, use your smartphones. So these are the various opportunities, projections that have been suggested by deep technologies. Hence, deep technology evolving still have challenges. The interpretation process requires reference data, sets from database that are related to some parasite. It means unless you harvest data, generate data, feed to the computer, you can't have any such deep agencies. The need for reimaginations. And as I told you, 21st century, the way we are doing research in the last century is completely different. It should be beyond your boundaries, beyond your domains. You should not come, if you are thinking you are health science expert, no interaction, no. Deep science breaks that, goes for engineering, technology, artificial intelligence, and difficulties in scaling up. It's a new thing coming up. And obviously, these are the points because this needs money, a lot of money. Nevertheless, to develop user-friendly, highly sensitive and point-of-care parasite diagnostics that is suitable for use in both high and low resource healthcare settings, these challenges is expected to overcome soon with more attention and market expansions. Same thing it was anticipated in 1980s when molecular techniques were introduced. It was believed that this will be confined to a few selected labs which have sophisticated or tertiary care health lab which can deliver money. But now the recent pandemic COVID-19 has taught us many of the things. One of the things that this most recent technology, real-time PCR COVID-19, we have successful use for the specific diagnosis of this viral disease COVID-19. Hence, when situation demands and expansion has come, obviously we can adopt and integrate new technologies. To conclude, my dear friends, greater threat to public health safety by increasing possibility of new and emerging infections are inevitable. That's what I mentioned. We are just trying to recover from COVID-19 pandemics, but we don't know in 2030, in 2040, what will be the emergence of a new microbial infections. Hence, One Health preparedness will definitely help the key role in protecting from future threats and preventing instances of outbreaks and pandemics. Multidisciplinary actions must be initiated to improve and innovate in areas of detections, reporting, medical and countermeasurings. I am really happy with this launch of One Health initiatives that will be such platforms to promote multidisciplinary engagement. Our universities have made a commitment and had a strong desire and will promote multidisciplinary activities in domain of academics, in domain of research, in domain of clinical care, and actions for overall benefits of the university and society as a whole. I do strongly believe universities have an important role to the society where we are situated. Just to conclude, I share this slide just to give a message. Let's change our thinking, our attitude, like deep technology. Go for deep thinking, encourage deep talent, use deep technologies, and always go for deep collaborations. I hope this should be the mantra of our technology, our SBB initiative in the future. If we rise to the occasions, taking all this thing into component, I'm confident in the years to come, we will do something, we'll contribute our might in this One Health project. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thanks, Dr. Parija. It was one of the fantastic treatments early in the morning for the One Health. More so because I have been attending these conferences globally, but nobody has touched parasites as a One Health parameter, because very rarely somebody just touches parasite and goes. And I think this will be anyway put on the YouTube. So many people will come to know the role of parasites in One Health. Secondly, I also agree with you that it's only through technology, it's only commitment and technology and human social behavior that can only combat with, take care of these particular disaster that can be prevented in future. Hey, podum. Don't. So another example, disaster. So in fact, podum, please. So we have a video recording from Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, the chief scientist at WHO. And from now on, we'll have video presentations. Otherwise, we have to have this meeting in the night, as I said. So
Thank
please.
you so much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting me to say a few words. The COVID-19 pandemic is a powerful demonstration that the health of humans, animals, and ecosystems is intimately linked. For many people, One Health may have once simply seemed a concept. It is no longer. We can only prevent future pandemics with an integrated One Health approach, which involves public health, animal health, as well as the environment that we share. One Health has to, of course, be more than a concept. It needs to be translated into systems at the local level that keep people safer. For example, we know that 70% of all emerging and re-emerging pathogens are zoonotic. And we also know that there is the possibility of the next pandemic, or disease X, as the WHO called it. We don't know when that pandemic will happen or where it will happen, but it is certain that it will happen again. But One Health needs to be more than just zoonosis. We cannot protect human health without considering the impact of human activities that disrupt ecosystems, encroach on habitats, and further drive climate change. And these activities include pollution. We have to think about both indoor and outdoor air pollution, large-scale deforestation and extraction, the intensification of agriculture and livestock production, the farming of both domestic and wild animals, the overuse and misuse of antibiotics, and the way that we produce and consume and trade food. The WHO definitely supports a One Health emphasis, which is also linked with the environment. And this has been actually outlined in the manifesto, the WHO manifesto for a healthy and green recovery from COVID-19. Indeed, it's quite ironical that it takes a pandemic and COVID-19 for us to drive change, to do things differently going forward. The whole world is interested in One Health now. It's going to be discussed at the forthcoming G7 and G20 meetings. Many national consultations are happening on this. There is a tripartite, which is the FAO, the Organization of Animal Health, and WHO, which along with the United Nations Environment Programme, so it's a tripartite plus one, are really taking up very seriously the issue of tackling the whole area of One Health and formulating frameworks and policies to be able to also monitor it at the global level. We've seen a lot of collaborative activities, both at the global level, but also at the regional and the country levels. For example, there is a launch of the United Against Rabies Forum, which is an example of all the different agencies and stakeholders coming together to tackle the problem of rabies, which unfortunately still kills a lot of people in the world. We continue to make progress in establishing the governance structures that will curb the threat of antimicrobial resistance. For example, we have set up a global leaders group that held its first meeting this year. It's going to have regular meetings, and there will also be an establishment of an independent panel on evidence for action to tackle antimicrobial resistance. WHO is planning to scale up further investments in One Health and work along with the partner agencies to build consensus, to make sure that there's collaboration and have some action items which are priorities. And we need to ensure that all the partner organizations really come together and that governments also invest in this area of work. So we're at a very critical juncture now when we have recognized not only the importance of zoonotic diseases that can turn into pandemics, but also, of course, the present threat of climate change. And the one way to address all of these issues together is really to bring public health, disease prevention, and environmental protection and sustainable livelihoods, particularly in the agriculture and veterinary sector, all of these together. So if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we're all stronger together. We need the science. We need the science to drive and produce the solutions, but we also need the solidarity. And this is where another area which affects the world as a whole, and therefore we need global solidarity and collaboration to tackle this. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me to say a few words.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Professor Peter Hudson William, the Emeritus Professor of Biology, is presenting a video.
Good morning, friends and colleagues throughout the world. I'm going to focus down on some of the specific issues that I'm asked to talk about, and those are the issues of spillover. And I think we really need an understanding and a framework, and that framework of understanding and insight will really give us that agility, will give us the way forward to look at this. I want to start by making a couple of comments about the about spillover. And that is, many of these recent spillovers are really derived from bats, and obviously the SARS-CoV-2, but also SARS-CoV-1 and a number of other infections are actually derived from bats. And we know, for example, that there's at least 3,000 coronavirus variants recorded in bats, and we know there's a huge high viral diversity there that we have to sort of understand if we're going to get to grips with what is taking place. The process of spillover is relatively straightforward, and I'm sure most of you will know this, because these are pathogens that circulate in reservoir hosts and then spill over. And there's this force of infection, this exposure of humans or to bridging hosts, then act to get the pathogen into the human population. I know we sometimes talk about zoonoses as, these are special events, but really, all of our infections must have come from wildlife at some stage or from domestic animals. So I think this is really a fundamental understanding we need in infectious dynamics. Of course, the approach that we take to this is to try and provide protection, and that is all about prevention. So if you just think for a moment, we prevent exposure through masks and quarantine, we prevent infection through vaccination, we prevent disease through therapeutics and monoclonal antibodies. But what we don't have is we don't have a prevention system for preventing spillover. And we need a framework of understanding to do that. And I'm going to throw some ideas out there to help set this agenda and set us moving. Of course, it is important to appreciate that preventing spillover is very important. Today, we passed the 2.5 million people who had died from COVID-19. That level of human suffering is obviously not acceptable, but that is a huge number. And I sometimes wonder where that's going to end up. Are we going to be looking at 4 million, 5 million dead people? And the economic costs are going to be well over $20 trillion, maybe $28 trillion I've seen as estimates, but this is a huge economic impact. What I want you to appreciate is that spillover is a process. We know it's a percolation process where the reservoir host is carrying the infection, it moves it about, it then exposes it perhaps to intermediate hosts, and then it's passed on to us and things. And there are multiple barriers that it must go through. We have to identify what those critical barriers are and how we can make sure that they're in place to stop spillover. We have to understand why the bats are shedding virus, where and when, and that so lead to exposure of either the bridging host or to humans. We have to understand this role of bridging host, and there's been much discussion of this with COVID-19, but I really think that we have a parsimonious explanation, and we don't have the data to go into that in too much detail, but we have to investigate that in much more detail. We have I think there are issues with the community ecology of the viruses. So in my own studies of bat viruses, we find that they're shedding not just one, but a whole community of viruses when they are shedding. So we have to understand what those drivers are and what the fundamental drivers are taking place. So I think this is a process. I think there are things we can do about it. Just to illustrate it, much of my work, working very closely with my postdoc, Rainer Plowright, is looking at Hendra virus, why spillover is actually occurring. This is a virus that comes from bats through domestic animals to humans. And we've been able to show that this is because of habitat loss interacting with extreme weather, resulting in nutritionally stressed bats and leading to spillover. So the question we've been asking for many years is how can we predict the next pandemic? And you can't do this unless you have the data. We can do this for Hendra, but you can't do this for diseases like COVID when you don't know about them. The question we should be asking is, how can we refine tools for better pathogen surveillance? And particularly how I think we should be looking at immunological assays. We should be having a global immunological observatory. We should be looking at surveillance of humans and surveillance of hosts and sentinels. And I would favor looking at dogs. Thank you very much, my colleagues. Good morning, friends and colleagues around the world. I'm going to focus down on some of the specific.
Thank you, sir. And now, Professor Kay Vanderhorst is the Managing Director, Pandemic Prevention Institute, the Rockefeller Foundation, USA, and also a co-founder for Global Alliance of Pandemic Preparedness and Responses. So I had a video presentation, please.
Good morning and good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, distinguished faculty. My name is Kai Vanderhorst, and I am hailing from Washington, D.C. First, I would like to congratulate and thank Dr. Rao for orchestrating this important convening. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to present here, especially being a member of the SPV faculty. As some of you may know, I'm also a senior visiting scholar at Penn State University. And of course, I'm the managing director for global networks and strategic partnerships with a focus on infectious disease at the Rockefeller Foundation. I have prepared a presentation that I would like to share with you, so allow me to make the adjustments. So again, I would just repeat that I'm really happy to be here today and to be giving this talk on emergence of pandemic and epidemic risk in a time of climate change. Peter, who is my mentor and friend has provided a lot of background on what I'm be building on today. Especially, he has provided a broad overview of the emergence of zoonotic disease, transmission dynamic, and the diverse root causes. My goal for today is to expand on this and focus on the role of climate change on the emergence of infectious disease with epidemic or pandemic potential. As part of this talk, I will provide 3 specific case examples, one in India, one in Brazil, and one in West Africa. In the next half century, it's projected that there will be at least 4,000 new spillover events as viruses cross from one animal species to another, including to humans, as you heard from Peter, because of migrations of wildlife, which will roughly double the number of first encounters species compared with today. Climate change accelerates the emergence of zoonotic infectious disease. It is the fire accelerant of disease emergence. Zoonotic disease emergence is becoming more frequent, and it's increasingly the result of climate change impacts, such as temperature increases, prolonged droughts, cataclysmic weather events, change in rainfall seasons. As you all know, other factors that are correlated to climate change and emerging infectious disease today and key are habitat destruction, deforestation, population growth, human migration, which is really frequently caused by climate change impact, and climate refugees. These combined factors result in the increased encroachment of humans on wildlife habitat and the resulting threat of pathogen exposure, causing zoonotic pathogen transmission to humans. Just to provide some concrete projections of what we will be facing over the next decades. Just imagine a 1 centigrade increase in spring temperatures result in greater than 50% increase of plague risk along the Western United States. Hantavirus will expand into the Northern hemispheres, meaning North America and Europe. We will see increase of outbreaks with highly pathogenic avian influenza in Europe by 2030. Imagine 50 to 60% of the estimated global population, that's 5 to 6 billion people in 2085, will be at risk of dengue transmission compared to 35% of the population today. As we've learned from Peter, greater than 65% of viruses are from zoonotic origin. Today, we see emergence and reemergence of viral hemorrhagic fevers in West Africa, coming from vectors and non-human primates, but also from bats. We see plague emergence in Madagascar. We see SARS-CoV-2 emerging from bats and possibly pangolins in China. We see yellow fever from non-human primates. We see anthrax from ruminants, whether it's in East Africa or whether that is in India. We see hantaviruses, Hendra, Nipah, and of course, the entire family of rodent-borne and mosquito-borne viruses that are arboviruses like Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. With climate change accelerating around the world, everything will move ecosystems too. At 2 degrees increase, according to one study, more than 10,000 plant species would lose half their habitable area. Every place in every part of the world would essentially trade its current climate for a hotter one. One study projected a change for European cities that was the equivalent of moving about 600 miles towards the equator. These temperature shifts will mean enormous relocations of animals, but also cause human climate refugees and accelerate migration, which will in turn create further interaction and exposure of immune-naive populations with wildlife, thereby accelerating disease transmission. Let's look at the impacts a little bit. Just looking at the graph on the left, this past century plus, we've experienced Spanish flu, we've experienced H3N2, we've seen HIV, H1N1, Nipah, SARS, Ebola, MERS-CoV, and of course, what's not on this chart, COVID, that have affected millions upon millions of people. And what is coming next? What is disease X? We just saw monkeypox showing up in populations that we've never seen it before. At the same time, let's take a look at the right. The economic burden impact is tremendous. We're looking at SARS with $30 to $50 billion, H1N1 with $50 billion, Ebola, $33 billion, and then the humongous impact on the global economy of COVID-19 with probably now up to $25 to $30 trillion. What I think is important to do is let's take some very specific looks at key case examples and see how climate change affects emerging infectious disease or disease around the world in key locations. So I'm going to provide 3 case examples, one in India, one in Brazil, and then I'm going to focus on viral hemorrhagic fever surveillance in West Africa. India's climate change peril. More than 1.5 million people in India will die every year from the beginning of next century due to drastic rise in temperatures caused by climate change. That's from a study conducted by the Climate Change Impact Lab in collaboration with the Tata Center and the University of Chicago. The study projected that India would witness a 4 degrees centigrade increase rise in average annual temperature by 2100 due to continuous high emissions of greenhouse gases, with an average number of extremely hot days around the country of over 35 degrees to increase by more than 8 times a year. By century's end, there could be 30 times as many severe heat waves as today, lasting 5 times as long on average. It is clear that India is extremely vulnerable to climate change and its associated health effects. For example, extreme precipitation resulting in floods that increase mosquito breeding sites and waterborne illnesses. The number of floods in India rose to 90 in the last 10-year period between 2006 and 2015. That's up from 67 in the 10 years between 1996 and 2005. And that's according to the UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. As a result, as you can see from the graphic on the right, dengue cases have dramatically increased in India. Delhi saw its highest number of cases ever in 2015, over 15,000. In fact, dengue has been cited as a priority health concern by the key central and state governments of India. More specifics. India reported over 1.93 lakh cases of dengue in 2021. That's more than 4 times the cases in 2020 and highest in 6 years since 2015. Similarly, 346 deaths were recorded and caused by dengue across India in 2021, over 5 times than in 2020 and highest in 2015. While dengue is not uncommon in India, in 2020, several states in northern and central India have seen sharp rises in the caseloads, nowhere more than Uttar Pradesh, where over 29,000 cases had been recorded by the State Directorate of Health Services. That's 2.5 times the number reported in 2019. In some districts in the state, cases have virtually exploded. For instance, Firozabad, a district in western Uttar Pradesh, recorded less than 100 cases of dengue annually in 2019 to 2020. This year, that number has jumped to more than 5,700 cases. Let me shift our attention to a different hotspot of climate change and infectious disease, Brazil. All regions in Brazil are affected by climate change. Brazil is anticipating worsening climate change effects, increases in average temperatures, extended summer seasonality. So that means warmer seasons, but also in other cases, some cooler regions. Changing, fluxing precipitation. So some regions will experience desertification, and some regions will change to become tropical and subtropical. By the end of the century, we would see, as you can see from the graphic on the right, a 2 to 3 degree increase in temperature. This change has led to the fact that climate change is accelerating the spread of dengue and other arboviruses in Brazil. Changes in temperature, precipitation, and seasonality affect changes to traditional dengue transmission barriers. So due to that fact, we see dengue emerging in new locations. Overall, 3 frontiers of dengue expansions have clearly been defined in Brazil: the south, the northwest, and the northeast of the country, all linked to climate change, urbanization, mobility. So we see, actually, and this is very interesting, in some regions we see desertification, and in some regions we see actually increase in rainfall, which then remove actually the space where Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus can actually effectively transmit dengue. So let's take a closer look at how this dengue transmission zone changes has affected Brazil between 2010 and 2022. The areas shaded in dark blue were endemic in 2010. When you follow the gradient from blue to red, you can see the progressive expansion of dengue across Brazil over the past 12 years. The enlarged box on the bottom right, it's a cutout of the southeastern Brazil, where dengue was not present due to temperatures that were inhospitable for Aedes aegypti. With rising temperatures in that area due to climate change, dengue has now made its entry and is expanding in the region. Here's some very sad facts. In the last 5 years, a total of 481 municipalities have detected community dengue transmission for the first time. That is accounting for 8.7 million new individuals at risk. Just in the first 3 months of 2022, there were 63 new municipalities with dengue transmission, half of them in the southern region that is depicted on the map. Let me go to my third case example, Africa. This is our final case example where we are focusing on viral hemorrhagic fever emergence in West Africa, specifically the Sahel region covering Senegal, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Gambia, which, when you look at the map, is Western Africa. I would really like you to take a closer look at this map and focus on the areas that are the red dotted area, stretching from Western Africa across the continent to East Africa, and then down south towards Tanzania, and then Botswana and Zimbabwe. What we want to focus on today is really the West African space that's also called the Sahel region, which is the arid, dry area that has been identified by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change as a climate hotspot, and is already experiencing many of these adverse effects of climate change. Take a close look at this graphic, and I'll let you pause for a second. It is about a concrete example of how climate change is accelerating the emergence of infectious disease with epidemic potential. So take a look at the graphic on the right, which overlays the area of West Africa, which you see on the left. It shows the routes of pastoralists, animal, and livestock migration across the region. Established what we call free movement protocols across West Africa have traditionally assured pan-regional, trans-border, frequently unmonitored nomadism, pastoralism, people and animal movement across the Sahel. These migration routes are also the areas that are heavily affected by climate change, especially the brown shaded pastoralist zone, as we've been discussing. Over the past years, climate change has exacerbated occurrence of droughts in the Western Sahel. Temperatures in the Sahel are rising 1.5 times faster than the global average. What does that do? As the graphic illustrates, this has forced nomads and pastoralists with their livestock to change migration routes to more habitable zones. In addition to being hosts for various zoonotic pathogens themselves, the livestock often carry vectors, namely ticks, or facilitate the movement of vector populations with them that contain pathogens. In parallel, due to desertification, wildlife movement can also be observed in pursuit of more viable habitats, such as bats, the latter being the reservoir for a variety of zoonotic pathogens, as we had discussed earlier. The combined impact has resulted in the introduction of pathogenic threats to new regions and geographies in West Africa, including population centers. Of particular concern is what we're now seeing is the emergence of new zoonotic diseases, including viral hemorrhagic fevers such as CCHF, so Crimean Congo viral hemorrhagic fever, Lassa fever, and Rift Valley fever. The latter viral hemorrhagic fevers are similar in transmissibility and have higher mortality rates. Of course, you know, the Ebola outbreak, as you know, caused a catastrophic outbreak between 2014 and 2016 in West Africa, with more than 28,000 cases and more than 11,000 deaths. Coincidentally, as of recent, we saw the second ever emergence of Marburg viral hemorrhagic fever in Ghana. We at Rockefeller Foundation are planning to partner with the Global Institute Pasteur Network to develop a pan-regional disease surveillance and forecasting system that facilitates data sharing across the region, and eventually, with the implementation of system of prediction tools, allows for the prediction early warning of disease emergence. But now to the core question. How might we mitigate, prepare for, and respond to these climate change-induced pathogenic threats at the local, regional, and global level? Of course, we need to stop the threat of global climate change as a core source of these emerging disease threats. This will take time, and it will take enormous political will. But what we do need to do, but what is it that we need to do now to defend our global health and global health now of our populations at the national, regional, and pan-regional level? I advocate that an interdisciplinary One Health security paradigm is needed to prepare for, mitigate, and respond to these pathogenic threats at the intersect of human, animal, and environmental health. At the national level, but also pan-regional, supranational levels, we need to bring together in a methodical way policymakers and stakeholders from the human, veterinary, and environmental sectors to drive integrated policy development, integrated capacity building for disease surveillance, to include joint investigation of outbreaks and preparedness, planning, and response, as well as critical and timely sharing of data. The Alliance of Pandemic Preparedness and Response, which I'm proud to be part of, was formed in 2020 to support the development of such local, national, and regional capacities. APAR builds on a multidisciplinary and intersectoral strategy that provides a comprehensive One Health security framework to, one, establish a network of interdisciplinary, intersectoral experts to enhance pan-regional biosecurity capacity, to prepare for and respond to high-threat human, veterinary, infectious disease with potential for transboundary impacts. Secondly, to launch a platform that advances sustainable health innovation in the areas of treatments, medical devices, vaccines, and diagnostics for the developing world. Third, serve as a forum to advance social and behavioral interventions best practices. And fourth, engage bioeconomy stakeholders to devise strategies geared towards mitigating future cascading impacts of diseases on economies. And finally, provide a forum for regular policy coordination among pan-regional partners, sharing information of lessons learned, implementing and developing best practices while facilitating all aspects of intersectoral coordination. Let me stop sharing. Anyways, so I'm sorry about the technical difficulty, but I would like to thank you and Dr. Rao once again for allowing me to present today. It was a true pleasure, and I'm looking forward to participating in future discussions. And I wish you a successful remaining One Health Day and successful progress on the interactions. Again, once again, it was a true pleasure. Sorry for the short technical differences or difficulties at the end. And I look forward to meeting many of you in person when I visit next India, either this year or early next year. With that, thank you very much. And I wish you my best.
So that makes the end of all the talks. I also invite all the online speakers, crossing about 50 of them. Thanks for all joining. In fact, it is a time when I would request our Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Jairaj, who has been keenly watching most of these programs, to make a few remarks before we go to the key event of this One Health Day, that is the crosstalk between veterinarians and the human medicine doctors. And I request Professor Jairaj to make few remarks before I go to the panel.
Congratulations, Dr. Rao, for having thought it fit enough to have an excellent topic and an excellent day to celebrate One Health Day. And in fact, I should be apologetic to myself that I was not even having an inkling of what this particular concept of One Health is. And today it is an awakening and sensitization program for me also, for having spent 45 years in the field of medical microbiology, that this particular innovative concept has been brought into fore by your kind self with the help of various other agencies. So congratulations on behalf of all the microbiologists and fellow panelists to Dr. Rao and the Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth authorities. For having said that, in fact, it is a right time to understand that there's one globe, one earth, one life, one living, and live and let live concept. In fact, from 1970s and 80s, when we started talking about environmental pollution, we thought it only from the point of physical and chemical point of pollution. So the pollution abatement measures, etc., were concentrated mainly on the physical and chemical pollutants and less on biological pollutants. Particularly the climate change, which has brought in too many changes even in the scenario of infectious diseases worldwide. And I would like to again emphasize the earlier speaker's point that this particular climate change has not only changed the physical and chemical environment, but also the biological environment, particularly with the introduction of liberalization and privatization, globalization, where the entire world became a global village and migration started taking place. And at the world level, the concept of global migration and animal farming and agricultural farming and the export and import of the food products, both animal-based and plant-based, definitely brought in the number of concepts as to what will be the sources of infection in future. Not only from the point of the food microbiology and the infectious diseases, and also from the point of adulterants and the chemicals that are used, excessive use of and abuse of antibiotics, pesticides, hormones, preservatives, colorants, carcinogens, etc., which ultimately affect the lifestyle itself and the normal life itself, which are non-infectious in one way. But the type of infectious diseases that are likely to come up and emerge, leading to a number of pandemics, really very, I should say, a cautious approach one has to take. So it's a correct time for all of us to think of global burden of diseases, not just from the point of India or from a particular region or a country. You have to think from the point of global burden of infectious diseases, not only from the point of human beings, but also from the point of animals. Because as the earlier speakers rightly said, 80% of the epidemics that we are likely to face are all zoonotic in nature. And now animal husbandry, animal farming is picking up so much. And second, because of the deforestation process, etc., the animals are coming to the land where the human habitants are. So there is a conflict of interest between the human habitation and animal habitations. When that conflict is severe on one side, and the global pollution and environment, global warming on the other side, and then this migration, unabated migration from one to another, both animal as well as human beings, ultimately is giving a caution to all of us that henceforth we should have a very, very firm policy on what is called One Health. So I congratulate Sri SBV University for having taken this particular initiative, especially Dr. Rao. In fact, I should say it was out of the box for me also to understand this particular concept. I wish that many more such essential components should take place. What I would like to add and emphasize at this particular function is this particular One Health should not confine only to the infectious diseases, because infectious diseases definitely it gives a warning to us, signal to us, and there are precautionary measures, and we can take it on a war footing basis to come out with because of the preventive measures or the control measures or vaccination. But what about the food adult trends, the pharmaceuticals, the nutraceuticals, with excessive use of antibiotics, pesticides, hormones, preservatives, and carcinogens, which are again alter the lifestyle of an individual. And recently we had one international webinar on myopia. In fact, myopia, we think it is just a physical disorder because of the lens. But why it is happening? And they say it's an epidemic, global epidemic now. It's pandemic. It's a non-infectious, but every child today is having goggles. It has got numbers when compared to our generation. Why? So when you think of this One Health, we should not just confine ourselves to the climate change, environmental pollution, and global warming, but not only to epidemics and pandemics of viral and bacterial nature and zoonotic diseases. And we should not forget biological warfare again is a political agenda of many of the countries. And always common people wants to know whether these epidemics are man-made or nature-made. So we as microbiologists, we as scientists are answerable to the common man. Then the food industries and the pharmaceutical industry also have a very important role to play, particularly from the point of the consumption of the food, preservation of the food, and so on. And the cancer is one of the third global burden of the disease when compared to infectious diseases, as also to be tackled if you have to concentrate on One Health. And no doubt it requires not only the medical microbiologists and health professionals and veterinarians on the one side, but also the food technologists, the animal technologists, then the environmental technologists and policy makers. And I appreciate the last slide of the earlier speaker, particularly Professor K, wherein he clearly brought in that there is a need for a holistic, integrated approach, not a piecemeal approach. And thanks to the global approach, particularly to combat Corona and COVID. Similarly, we should come out with such global perspectives to combat the emerging diseases, existing diseases, at the same time, look for one globe, One Health. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I should congratulate from the bottom of my heart, Dr. Rao, for having given this particular opportunity for me to share my comments. Thanks to all the speakers, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Madam, Professor Peter, for having spoken about spillover of infectious diseases. In fact, it's an eye-opener for all of us that what are the other likely emerging diseases, and especially Professor K, who gave a world's perspective of how exactly the dengue is playing a very important component. Even in our own place in Maharashtra now, next to swine flu, next to Corona, dengue has got the highest number of incidents. Probably we have to be particularly aware of these emerging global disorders, and hence we should ultimately speak of one voice as global burden of infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases leading towards One Health. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Dr. Rao.
Now, without much time, I first welcome all the online panelists, Dr. Tirumurugan, Dr. Gill, all the way from Ludhiana. Gadvasu is joined.
Thank you.
And then, please welcome Dr. Dinkar Raj from Tamil Nadu Veterinary University, Dinkar has a lot of background in these matters. Welcome, Dr. Dinkar. I now request Dr. S.L. Hoti to occupy one of the chairs on this side, on my left. And camera on is also on. And then Dr. Raja Gunalan is also on the line. Are you there, sir? Yeah, you are also welcome from. So these are the people I have selectively invited from the point of veterinary and basic sciences dealing with zoonotics and others. And we have Dr. Professor Muhammad Hanifa, Head of General Medicine. Please sit in one of this side, right side.
If you don't mind, can I sit this side?
Oh, yes, yes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That is a good start, good start. You sit down. Huh? Then we have Dr. कहाँ पर इनका नाम ना? Dr. Bhargavi? Bhanureka, sorry. Dr. Bhanureka from, I always said Bhargavi. Dr. Bhanureka, she is from Veterinary College of Pondicherry, dealing with public health. Professor and Head, please sit down. Bhanureka, right. So then we'll have Professor Palnivel, Head of Pulmonary Medicine, who actually headed the Covaxin phase 3 clinical trials very successfully during the pandemics. And Professor Soundararajan, Professor and Head of Pediatrics. He has been dealing with recently the unknown fever of young children, neonates. Welcome, sir. We have invited Dr. Joshi from microbiology. Anyway, he's not there.
Thank you. I'm here, sir.
Okay, he's online. Dr. Joshi, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome to the panel. And Dr. Surindaran, Assistant Professor, Infectious Diseases. Surinder. And I also invited Dr. Balaji, who is the Head of Clinical Trials and Training Program of MGC. So, welcome to all of you. We'll just have a few rounds of discussion. To start with, we'll have some 1 or 2 lines of introduction, particularly with respect to your role in any role that you have played in these type of zoonotics or any cross-infective areas. I'll start with Dr. Hoti. You can sit down quick, sir. Okay. We'll cover in the camera.
Very warm good morning to everybody. And I thank Professor Rao and also Honorable Pro-Chancellor and my teacher, Professor Y.M. Jayaraj. I'm particularly pleased to see him after many, many years. How are you, sir?
Fine, sir. Nice to see you today on the panel.
Right, thank you. I have been working on zoonotic diseases, leptospirosis, then scrub typhus, cashnode forest disease, dengue, chikungunya, and also Zika. And more recently, we were embarked on a project on One Health for zoonotic diseases, wherein we have roped in probably a vast array of experts into this national project, which includes not only medical specialists, it includes the veterinarians, then fisheries biologists, environmentalists who are working on climate change and global warming, then policy makers, especially the state governments and the district health authorities. So we have taken everybody, you name it, and we have on board. So we had several stakeholders meeting where we elicited the.
So I'll get back to that one again.
Yeah, sorry.
Because that is an example that you have to anyway give.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
we'll go to Dr. Dinkar Raj. Just few words.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Dinakar Raj from Tanuvas, and thanks Dr. Rao and other organizers for the opportunity. So we have been working with a lot of zoonotic diseases with Dr. Rao mentoring us in terms of brucella. During the One Health conference, international conference, we released a Brew Alert kit, which was the only competitive ELISA-based kit for diagnosis of brucella. And he was also instrumental in funding us a program called MyDan, which is Mycobacterium tuberculosis network program. In that, we have got some very interesting findings that we could isolate and identify Mycobacterium oryges. And we could not see any Mycobacterium bovis at all in many of the samples. We have full genome sequence, more than 13 isolates, and very interesting to see that almost all the animal origin Mycobacteria belong to oryges, and there was very little tuberculosis, Mycobacterium bovis or tuberculosis, indicating again the importance of also the reverse zoonosis. In addition to the zoonotic infection, there are a lot of diseases coming from man into animals, which also needs to be given some concentration.
Okay, thank you, Dinkar. I think we'll just shift to brief statement by, I'm sorry, I missed Dr. Professor Stephen, who has been working in this institute for a long time on the zoonotics. Professor Stephen, if you can say 2 words, over to you.
Yeah. I'm a little junior to our Pro-Chancellor, Professor Jairaj sir. I got only 40 years experience in microbiology. And I've done work, a lot of my work is on zoonosis only, right from rickettsial Q fever, scrub typhus, brucellosis, toxoplasmosis, and all this. So way back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, I could also work on the isolation aspects of rickettsial diseases, which was a very hazardous experiment. Okay. So I feel that there's a lot to do more. Thank you.
Please tell 2 lines because we'll come back to these issues again. Professor Gill.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Dr. JPS Gill. I have about 30-year experience on zoonosis because I am a person of a public health and zoonosis. I am worked as a head of the Department of Veterinary Public Health, then founder director of School of Public Health and Zoonosis, and then director of Center of One Health at Gadwasu. So I am involved in all major One Health programs in India as a committee member. I am working with the ICMR as a committee member of ICMR Joint Working Group, member of NCDC National Committee on Zoonosis. So basically work on the ground level on tuberculosis, brucellosis, parasitic zoonosis, emerging zoonosis. So even I'm the nodal officer of our COVID diagnostic lab, which has been testing the COVID sample, human samples. I have tested about 6 lakh samples till today. So basically I'm working on the One Health for the last 10 years with the national and international partners and with the international projects with University of Saskatchewan and Calgary on One Health initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll shift to Dr. Hanifa. Manifa.
Well, thank you, sir. My interest in One Health started in some time around 2018 or 2019 when I was invited to Malaysia to run a workshop on rabies. Prior to that, we've been dealing with quite a number of zoonotic diseases. I was quite aware of brucellosis, quite rampant in Gulf countries where I was working. And after coming back to India, we have not seen that much of a thing. I don't know whether there was a deficit in diagnosis by various means or not. And leptospirosis, of course, it is very much rampant. Every time after the rains, we get a lot of cases of leptospirosis. So my interest now is to be actually collaborate with the veterinary doctors, veterinarians, and to take further in what way we can improve the One Health program. Thank you.
I'll shift to online. Professor Tirumurugan.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. So good afternoon, sir, and thanks to Dr. Rao for the opportunity. Myself, Dr. Tirumurugan, heading the translation research platform for veterinary parameters, the novel initiative that was initiated by Dr. Rao in the veterinary sector, and it is the only institution that has the translation platform for veterinary biology. So myself have been associated with rabies since my PhD part. We have been involved in setting up an NABL accredited testing service for rabies at the Department of Animal Biotechnology. As Dr. Dinakar said, we have been upscaling the True Alert kit that is the only competitive LAHR that is available in the country, and also have been involved for a brief time in the Leptospira Diagnostic Laboratory, providing the diagnostic testing services for both humans and animals. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we'll shift to Dr. Palnivel.
A very good afternoon. Thank you, sir, for giving us an opportunity for an unique experience. As a clinician, my experience usually pertains to the clinical encounters with the viral fevers, the previous SARS and the current COVID. And of course, I have 1.5 years, decades experience with tuberculosis as well. I am the chairperson of the Zonal Task Force South 2. I am intricately working with the Central TB Division, and I am one of the missionaries for the NTB Strategy 2025. Thanks to be here.
So we'll shift to Professor Sundararajan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. My experience is actually we've been treating a lot of scrub typhus in this zone. But actually we don't get much leptospirosis in this belt. I don't know why. So in fact, we got peculiar case of scrub typhus also. We had 2 cases of scrub typhus affecting the cerebellum. The child has been presenting with unsteadiness and all. And the post-COVID, the multi-system inflammatory disease also, even now we have got 2 patients. So that is on the rise actually. That is my experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Surendran.
Thank you, sir. So as clinicians, we see all these patients with zoonosis, bacteriology, virology, but we concentrate mainly on the clinical aspects, diagnostic dilemmas, and treatment and management aspects. But this One Health concept is very new to me. Only because of this conference, I had to Google and learn about it. So it would be definitely good for us to know the technical aspects, preparedness, public health aspects of the diseases we treat. So I'm excited to know from this panel. Thank you.
Dr. Balaji.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon all. Basically, I'm the clinical pharmacologist, and I'm heading the clinical trial center here. Regarding the zoonotic diseases, I have been instrumental in conducting and developing the protocols for clinical trials for rabies. And soon we'll be doing one clinical trial on yellow fever, although we don't have in India, but we need to be prepared for it. And we need to have the vaccine for it. So let's hope we'll conduct this trial also successfully.
Dr. Bhanurek.
Good afternoon, one and all. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And also best wishes for the initiative, successful initiative, this One Health. And myself, actually, I'm heading the Department of Veterinary Public Health in Rajiv Gandhi Institute. So where we are directly teaching the zoonotic diseases to all the students. Apart from that, on research side, actually zoonotic tuberculosis and listeriasis, this is the area which I have worked with. Apart from that, now we are also concentrating on foodborne zoonotic diseases, including Salmonella, E. coli, Aeromonas, and Staphylococcus, and all these organisms we are from various food sources. And also I'm a member of State Action Plan for Rabies Elimination of UT of Puducherry. I'm also a part of Tropical One Health initiative. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Joshi.
And thank you, Rao, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I'm Dr. Joshi. I head the microbiology department at MGMCRI, as well as I'm the deputy medical superintendent for the laboratory services. Whatever the clinicians suspect, I try my level best to identify them. My interest of research is bloodstream infections mostly. And, COVID was a learning experience for me. Thank you.
Then finally, Dr. Raja Gunalan.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Sir, I'm an assistant professor working in Veterinary College and Research Institute, Tirunelveli. My experience, I'm working on Campylobacteriosis, and recently we are working on coccidiosis in southern districts of Tamil Nadu. After an outbreak of, or we can say, an abortion cases, we started that work, and we got good results also. And currently, we are in the process of establishing a zoonosis research laboratory in southern part of Tamil Nadu. That's my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. So that shows that there is a various experiences by clinicians and also the veterinarians. Quite often, I have not seen any clinician in my experience of last 10-15 years who is actively engaged in diagnosis of any zoonosis. If accidentally a patient comes, he comes. So one experience I would like to tell you, we are fortunate in MGMCRI that we have Professor Stephen, and also now he has developed some more people in the microbiology department who have been constantly documenting scrub typhus, Q fever, rickettsia, and published lots of papers, mostly diagnosis and epidemiology. And some papers I see occasionally from JIPMER. And in fact, the old JIPMER papers are again from Professor Stephen himself. So at the same time, the veterinarians somehow I have not seen an incident except in case of Leptospira in Tamil Nadu Veterinary University. I think even now MMC and many hospitals send patients for diagnosis, Tirumurugan.
Yes, sir. Actually, like throughout the city of Chennai, we have been receiving samples from treatments and also sharing the same with the public health department.
So some of these references are there, but other than that, I don't find any veterinary people referring to either clinicians or clinicians referring to veterinarians. So at the interface, the One Health has to work. If the One Health has to work, there should be all these dialogues that we heard, the diagrams, the integration, the global, local. In my view, it's a one point of policy. But if it's practice, if you want to twist One Health into 360 degrees, it is actually interface between the human and veterinary medicine interaction that is key. Why I'm telling you is that I remember Dr. Gill and perhaps Dr. Dinkar Raj was there in Gujarat. We had one Brucella workshop in which the minister himself admitted, who was asked to inaugurate, that he had brucellosis and high fever of unknown discount. Nobody diagnosed it. Finally, there is one another partner with us, Chandel, so who happened to diagnose it as brucellosis. That's how the minister became closer to veterinary clinician. So he happened to come for inauguration. So he was so closely and was so emotional that after all I had to get diagnosed from veterinarian. It was later treated by the clinicians also. The second incident, which is very interesting, is that, when we want to do something like villages free of some brucella or something, one of the things which is that depends on the geography also. If you ask Dr. Kai or anybody from West, the moment you find a simple brucella, the whole defense organ, because it is a bioweapon organism also, they all go and then completely extinct that place. Then nothing will be remaining. Here brucella is endemic, and we don't have enough documentation of human incidences except some isolated cases. So what I would like to ask, I'll start with Dr. Hanifa, that why is that there is an inhibition or there is any lack of opportunity in interacting with veterinarians from clinicians? Is it that, is it something to do with the degree or human-animal issue, or?
No, it's not like that. What has happened is that there's no inkling, or even that idea has not come forth.
Okay.
For example, you are working in a medical college, you are doing clinics, you are admitting patients and everything. Even if it's a zoonotic diseases, you think that you are reasonably well trained to diagnose. The classical examples will be like leptospirosis, brucellosis, SARS, and bird flu, and all that. But what has totally, it's a sensitization program. That there's no inkling that we can refer any patient to a veterinarian. So that inkling is not there.
Okay.
So that One Health concept probably has brought in. And if we refer how the patient, because we have our patients, they have their patients.
Yes.
Okay. They will look their patients like animals. We look our patients like other human beings.
Nice.
So when we send our patient to them, will they accept that they are also going to be their patients? That's the thing. The other aspect is that whether the zoonotic diseases which present in human beings, do they manifest the same way as the same zoonotic disease which manifest in animals?
Okay.
So there is another aspect to be looked into. But otherwise, the collaboration is really required. And what I have understood going through the thing is that enough people, they send human beings to veterinarians. Whenever the suspicion is there about zoonotic diseases, even if the suspicion, even confirmed zoonotic diseases, the complications, the rest of the thing, they take the help of the veterinarians. That is a fact which is happening in other countries.
Actually, in our own country, my first experience is with Gadabasu Public Health Initiative, where unlike what you said, the doctor is an integral part of public health clinic. Dr. Gill, can you tell this example?
Yeah. At Gadwasu, when we started the working on the zoonosis, we do a survey in the medical colleges. What the students know about the brucellosis or the other zoonotic diseases. To our surprise, only 5% even tell that the brucellosis, little detail about them. Then we initiated the work of giving awareness in the medical colleges, in the government medical college and private and even the PGI. The result comes significantly better. We are every month getting 40 to 50 cases of brucellosis, which they are not diagnosing. They are sending us for the diagnosis. And we have one medical officer in our university which runs the Brucella clinics on 2 days of the week. And all the cases are referred to him and he treated. And we are tracking all the cases. Even all the medical colleges and the hospitals in my area, they know what brucellosis is, and they are sending the sample. Second is the parasitic zoonosis, that the cysticercosis. We have the facilities. Our medical college, the Anand Medical College, and other are sending the cases of the epilepsy for the diagnosis of the cysticercosis disease. So if we working in the silos, we can't work on public health. We need to set our inhibitions, have to work together, because both the medical and the veterinary institutes can't have the same diagnostics and the other facilities. If some facilities are better in the medical college, veterinarians should use them. Otherwise, the vice versa, the medical persons should send the cases or the samples to the veterinarian where the facilities for the zoonotic disease. So we have run a very successful model in Punjab, in Gadwasu.
So any such example, probably on the initiation of the, what is it, sir? Cassino forest virus. The initiative that the Dr. Hoti has taken up in the Indian Veterinary Vector Research Control, ICMR, can be briefly, there is any match between the participation of veterinary, or are you bringing a policy or by project or whatever? What is the effort you have been making?
No, here, this is a very complex life cycle wherein the ground animals in the forest, especially forest fringe, and also the vectors, which are basically ticks, Haemaphysalis species. And this is where the veterinarians have a major role to play. How to diagnose the disease, how to investigate the outbreak. And there is a, I should say, it is necessary that the medical, then the veterinary specialists come together and identify the reservoirs, the vectors, and of course the clinical manifestations, and how to prevent and how to manage the patient. So all these aspects involve multidisciplinary approach. So that is the one model which we are currently developing. And again, the climate is playing a major role, and the forestry, how forest degradation can, lead to spillover of the zoonotic diseases. This is a very important issue in most of the zoonotic diseases because spillover leads to the outbreaks. So we are looking at this angle, and we are closely working with both medical as well as veterinary specialists, as also environmental specialists like National Remote Sensing Agency, who contribute by way of identifying the climatic variables, then the forest degradation, because how this disease came into being is that in 1957, when I was born, so the one major project, Sharavati project, was implemented in Karnataka, and that inundated vast forest area, and the wild animals came into this area in search of food, and they brought in the virus.
Spillover.
Yeah, spillover. And that was the main culprit which led to the outbreak of this disease. And the major challenge was to identify the reservoirs in order to control. You are talking about clinical practice, but at a broader range, we'll have to prevent
I'll come to
and
that,
eliminate.
Diagnosis part now. See, Dr. Pallivel and Dr. Soundarajan, you suppose a patient comes as a clinician. Hanifa said that there is a hesitation to send to veterinarian. That's fine. Forget about veterinarian. Suppose somebody comes with a fever. We generally look at malaria is there or pneumonia is there, or say, for example, in case of pulmonology, same in case of pediatrics. So do you ever suspect beyond your own domain of knowledge of diagnosis at a clinical level? I'm asking one after another. Maybe Palnivel will start.
We should accept the fact that we usually don't, because fundamentally we are not taught that principle of exploring a zoonotic as the first thing. And we should also accept that clinicians are very selfish because they think about only humans and humans and humans. We don't think about the One Health concept. The matter that all of us frankly accept this One Health concept is unique to us. And though this concept is there for decades old, there is a deep divide. You should understand that, sir. So that is because fundamentally the curriculum does not underline this concept. Any of the medical textbooks, if you see, we don't find this One Health concept, even now. And it's the right time we change that. And that is the reason we have been taught like that. We keep zoonosis at the end as a diagnosis by exclusion. You think of everything first, then if nothing fits in, then you go and ask your microbiologist, can this be nocardiosis or this rubella, whatever it is. So that we frankly accept that we don't think, but the times are changing. Okay. With the recent pandemics, we think of them as first. We first ask any history of exposure to animals, any history of recent travel, and all the things. The way we explore our history is changing. Yes.
Yeah. Soundarajan,
I think
because you deal with people who are children.
I have to agree with Dr. Palnivel. I think we have not been trained that way. It does not come from our own teachers. So that is, I think the time has to change.
So how do we address this issue? Is it at a policy level, NMC level, or the NMC and ICMR and all these people should come together?
No, sir, we can.
Because how to inculcate that new thinking of One Health in our own syllabus teaching, or as an optional course or something?
We can make some changes in the syllabus also. I think the latest CBME also has not given any focus on these things. I think the change has to come from us. I think we have got some local liberty to change some of the curricular focus and all.
Okay.
Probably we only have to take some initiative. As he said, it's very new to us.
So when it comes to training, Surendran, you have been in the specializing in infectious diseases, whatever course you have done after MD, might have one certificate course or something. Where did you do the certificate course?
Apollo Chennai.
Apollo Chennai. So in the training of this certificate course, did they ever mention you about zoonotic diseases?
Yes, sir. We are trained in zoonotic diseases, but mainly in diagnostics, management, and treatment.
Okay.
So not in the research aspect or the what is necessary to manage a patient, not beyond that. So our point of contact will be a microbiologist. We were taught to ask histories. Was there any history of contact with a pigeon, bat exposure? Even for encephalitis cases, all these epidemiological links are very important with animal exposure. So all those we were taught, but not in terms of research or seroprevalence studies. What is the local, because we do not have contact with veterinarians.
Yeah.
So we were not taught to the point of contact beyond a microbiologist. So that is where it stands.
So I'll come back to Balaji on a clinical trial later. Now, all of the three are telling about the microbiology. So as an MD microbiology, heading the Department of Medical Microbiology here, because I am just taking our own people for access purposes. One statement was made that if nothing works out, then we will say microbiologists, oh, please look for something related to zoonotics. So what is your take on this? What is your experience on this? I'll come to Stephen after that, Dr. Joshi? Dr. Joshi?
As per the curriculum, we don't go much into that One Health aspect of it, but we do the common ones. We are well trained to diagnose them based on our interest, because we are basically clinical microbiologists. What the clinician faces, we try our level best to identify them. At a curricular level, no, we don't give too much of importance to that. But then there are offshoots, people who do intercolaria, there are people who do in scrub. Their own interest. My teacher was Dr. Arun Kumar. He was a virologist. He was the first person who identified Nipah in Kerala. When the outbreak happened in Kerala, he was there. So based on institutions, we don't have a per se course for mingling the both. Sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll shift to Professor Stephen. Professor Stephen, actually, both in JIPMER as well as Manipal also, and also here for a long time, you have been constantly pursuing zoonotics in terms of publication as a medical microbiologist. So how do you take this discussion? Is it that medical microbiologists are not aware of it? Or is it that clinicians are not referring to it? Or there is an issue of syllabus? Or there is issue of ego in interacting with veterinarians?
So they may not be much inclined to discuss the veterinarians because there is no common platform for them to discuss. That is an unfortunate thing. There is no ego as such because they feel as a two different thing. Another thing is the textbook as far as microbiology, we tell something about zoonosis, we deal with them. But as a whole, if you see the medical curriculum, there might be much scope for going into the details. Perhaps they can go beyond that national curriculum and they can always add additional courses without burdening the students too much. They are always welcome, some minimal amount. And they do always discuss, a lot of people have discussed with me, if they feel that there is something, for example, Professor Soundararajan or Dr. Kanipa and all this, sometimes they say the symptoms may look like scrub typhus and all that. So how do we help them? If we have the proper kits, which sometimes we make it available routinely, or sometimes thanks to the generosity of ICMR and the SBV, I got a lot of research projects so that I can sustain it. And when they ask for some specific investigation, like brucellosis or even rickettsial, any rickettsial, we will be able to help them. And they are also happy that they could get the correct diagnosis. So it is all, now the clinicians are also definitely more, they have got a broader idea or concept regarding the zoonotic disease, and they are also coming forward better.
For all these discussions, why did you specialize in so many papers related to zoonotics? Is it your passion or it is interest? Or it was easy to do it?
No, sir. It's my PhD topic is on rickettsia, and I worked on rickettsial isolation, and this brucella and all that I have done way back in the 80 itself. I done mostly seroprevalence studies, man and animal, which I could continue here with the more advanced technique and then kits available. That's the reason. Sir.
So how many papers you published on zoonotics, being in the medical college?
Around 30, sir, approximately 30. So initially it was around 5 years, then later it becomes another 20 years. So there is a gap of 2 decades in between.
So during that period, did you ever interact with any veterinarian?
Sure, sir. I have the privilege to interact with veterinarians. Some of them have been my co-investigators, like veterinary microbiologist, Dr. Anthony Prabhakar and all that. So I have been in touch with them because I know the value of the veterinary microbiologist. And when I go for conference also, when you present paper, there is always a pediatrician, clinical medicine person, and also a veterinary microbiologist in our papers. I give due respect to them, due regards to whatever work they have done, contribution.
You went to them or they came to you?
So I went to them, sir. I went to them. Then they have been very cooperative. Nice understanding.
Here is a doctor, MD microbiologist, who went to veterinarians. That's a good development. I think, Dinkar, you have any experience of interacting with veterinarians, either yourself or they coming to you? And how many incidences it has happened in your career?
So in our Department of Animal Biotechnology, Madras Veterinary College, we have NABL accredited lab for rabies diagnosis and serology for for animals, which is NABL accredited, but we also get a lot of samples from Institute for Child Health, which is an EGMOR, and we do diagnosis free of charge for rabies in humans, although that part is not NABL accredited. And recently also we have a certain requests from some companies to test their monoclonals using the street rabies virus isolates in terms of its reactivity, which we propose to do. And also some kind of trial they propose to do in the veterinary students with respect to the post-exposure rabies regimen. That also we are taking. So there is a kind of collaboration which is there in diseases like rabies, where it is well known that human rabies can be controlled only if we control rabies in dogs and so on. But for other diseases, I think there is some gap that needs to be bridged. And a couple of points for the consideration is, I think, the kind of history taking in a clinical setup human hospital. I think they should also include the association of the patient with the animals, or how long is the association, or what kind of contacts and all that. And the kind of fever panel that they're using for checking, I don't think it includes, say, brucella or leptospira. It probably includes only malaria, typhoid, chikungunya, dengue, and so on. So if this also can be added to the fever panel, this could be really helpful, because in a very leading private hospital in Chennai, they gave us some samples which were negative in the fever panel, which they classified as PUO, pyrexia of unknown origin, and we could see that about 10% of the samples were positive for brucella. So which I think they could have identified had they included brucella in the fever panel. So I think these are small changes, as one of the expert panelists suggested. There needs to be a lot of sensitization for other diseases. Probably for disease like rabies, it is already existing. Another point is, even if they suspect something, they don't know where to send the sample, or what kind of sample to be sent. So many cases we have seen for rabies, they take some conjunctival smears. And invariably, I should say that the quality of the smears are so poor that the diagnosis also becomes challenging. We are really concerned, being a small child
when they suspect rabies and were unable to diagnose unequivocally because of the quality of sample. So I think they also need some kind of sensitization and sample collection, as well as a kind of labs should be identified, a consortium of labs where they suspect some kind of zoonotic disease. This is the place to be sent. And those things would really change the kind of One Health approach, I think.
Thank you. Dr. Bhanureka, what is
Sir.
your interaction with clinicians?
Actually, sir, as far as our work is concerned, actually, we include always the human samples as a part of our research. As like in River, including Dr. Stephen and people from IGMC, people from PIMS and JIPMER. They are there in our advisory committee. We also include human samples as a part of our research program, maybe for a prevalence study.
So
It is
their
for the-
inclusion is
like-
by the choice of veterinary college or by the government?
Sir, it's our own choice. We have chosen.
You have chosen.
We
Okay, then
want
it's
him.
okay.
We wanted him.
Because it's a
But we
government
want him.
supported, so Pondicherry government might have put some people
No,
there.
no, not like that, sir. Not like that.
Okay.
People who are expertise in that particular field, we just go and approach them and we have them in our thing. For example, when we study the seroprevalence of brucellosis, we also take samples
Actually,
from the.
I'm probing these things because to go deeper into the issue, because sometimes
Yes,
I'll
sir.
say, okay, you put Hotis up at any cost you put in. So because so that should not happen, I'm telling you. That's why.
Okay, sir. We also
Is it
in-
your choice or somebody's choice?
No, sir. No, sir. Our choice. It's both in student and the guide's choice. So we also include the goat keepers or the goat handlers. When we go and collect food sample, for example, meat sample or milk sample, we also include samples from the butchers or the slaughterhouse workers. So this is how we do our research, doing it from a One Health angle. But the problem here is all the research activities are happening in a fragmented manner. That
Okay.
is, the collaborative effort is not coming out. Another aspect actually I would like to talk about is the for the medical people in their curriculum. CME program is there. Is it, sir? Is it existing?
Sure, I'm
So
here in
this
the
is a
auditorium.
program, continuous medical education program in many of the medical colleges in UT of Puducherry. We veterinarians are part of it. We are going and taking, for example, observance of World Rabies Day or World Zoonosis Day or Environment Day. During these time, either the medical people, they come and take classes for our students, and we go and take classes, especially on rabies. And veterinarian can really can give a good insight on rabies, because we had seen number of cases on rabies, which many of the human doctors would not have. So in that angle, actually students will be many zoonotic diseases. Veterinarians can give a very good insight to all the students. So continuous medical education program will be one of the choice for you to choose and get the veterinarians from different parts of the.
What about Dr. Raja? What is your experience in the public health department? Do you interact with clinicians?
Yes, sir. We do interact with the veterinary medical college people, sir. The community medicine department, they interact with us. We bring them for any programs like zoonosis day programs and all. And whenever we suspect a veterinarian, if a fellow, a junior or a friend of us working in Tirunelveli or around districts, when they suspect for brucellosis, we preliminarily test the samples here, and if we find them positive, we refer them to the medical college and ask them to continue the treatment. So that way we are able to maintain the One Health collaboration also, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Balaji, to conclude the clinical part, so are there any incidences in the history or now or in future, so you can, where a particular antibiotic is tried in both animals and humans at the same time as a clinical trial regime?
There are several antibiotics which are used commonly in human and in animals. And this misuse of antibiotic is a lot of there. And that is leading to the development of a drug resistance, bacterial antibiotic drug resistance. A good example is oxytetracycline, because it is very easily available at the chemist shop, and because of the easy availability, the farmers where they have their cows having mastitis, almost 40 to 50% cows during their lactation period, they develop this mastitis. And so this is used very randomly, even without the prescription of the veterinarian. So this can lead to drug resistance. So
many drugs, not only the antibiotics, say many painkillers, then another one is oxytocin. These are used even in animals and in human. The same drug is used. So there is a need for a very collaborative effort to prevent this irrational use of drugs and the problem arising from them. And also other encounter of where I had to interact with the veterinarians as a pharmacologist in the drug development process. Because before the clinical trials, most of the drugs are tried in the preclinical animal studies, and veterinarian play a very crucial part there in handling the animals and doing the toxicity studies and the data interpretation, then the deciding the starting dose in the humans, and then developing of animal model different disease animal models. So there are a lot of instances where the veterinarian and a pharmacologist interact and can do a collaborative research.
So what we'll do, we'll have one round of diagnosis and the last round of policy. Then we'll conclude. When it comes to diagnosis, Dr. Tirumurugan, you have been very actively involved in validation on OIE principles of Brucella diagnostic kits also. And then you are now heading a translation center for biologicals. So is it that the diagnostics are easily available for majority of zoonotic diseases, or they are expensive, or they are not indigenous? What is the situation in diagnostics, particularly if a doctor want to just buy across a diagnostic for zoonotic disease and test along with his own microbiology department? So how accessible they are, how costly they are, what is the current situation?
Thank you. So let me put this in two or three contexts, which I probably a kind of a bit exposure. One, looking at brucellosis, the kind of a testing facility available for animal samples is available almost most of the veterinary institutions. But however, when you look at the human samples, there is not much available. So it's a scenario where there is a gap between the medical and the veterinary faculty in terms of where to send the samples. Second, in terms of brucellosis, when you look at the kind of diagnostic kits that is available, there are several diagnostic methods, but however, in terms of diagnostic kits, there's not kind of a gold standard which is already set in. And when you look at what is available in the country in terms of indigenously developed, they are not appropriately calibrated, because for every diagnostic has to be appropriately validated for a fitness of the purpose. We call that as fitness of purpose, like where it is intended to be. It's to be intended for elimination or clinical diagnosis. Most of the kits that has been developed indigenously for brucellosis is not calibrated as per the international principles. So that is one. But however, if you look at, there are a couple of institutes, including Canvas, the Brew Alert, which has been calibrated as per the required norms, so that like it even picks the weak positive samples as not as negative but as positive. Second, in terms of leptospirosis, like it's a classical example where even though tests are available in many of the laboratories, they rely on an ELISA. The gold standard is a MAT, microscopic agglutination test, which is done in only few of the laboratories where they can handle the cultures. So in this scenario, when you go back and look at the correlation between a microscopic agglutination test and the available ELISA, which is commercially available in many of the companies, they don't correlate much, because like there is a lot of non-specific reactivity with the antigen that is used for detection. So in that scenario, you end up with a lot of false negative that can happen in the case of leptospirosis. So probably one approach where like what has been done for rabies in the elimination program, which they have put in the draft, they've already identified a couple of. Dr. Dhanakar, sir, anything to be added here?
Hello? You are...
Yeah, I'll complete this, sir.
Yeah.
In case of rabies, in the elimination draft targeting 2026, they've already put on map the existing laboratories for human diagnosis and existing laboratories that have been approved for animal diagnosis. So in case of something in terms of very important diseases, having something already identified in terms of their exact diagnosis will be much more helpful and supportive also. And sir, if you don't mind, like I will just add on 2 points, and I have a travel plan by 2 o'clock, so I just need to leave.
Okay.
To support with already what the medical professional has already been said, like we do find some kind of a short time points where we have exchanges, but in terms of introducing into the curriculum, it'll be like a kind of a monotonous one which already happens. I was just quickly googling through to look at what is the interface. In one of the programs, they have given a situation where in joint human and animal vaccination programs, if the both of the partners come across, so there's a scenario where they really see the scenario that is happening in the field. So rather than putting into a curriculum, if the medical undergraduate students can have an exposure for a shorter period of time in veterinary colleges, and a veterinary professional in the medical college for a short time in terms of the infectious diseases, they will have a kind of a practical view of what is happening in the field. So they will already establish some contacts to people whom they can approach in terms of the future scenario. They'll also come to know about some of the basic diagnostic labs that are available for the zoonotic diseases also.
Okay.
So thanks for the opportunity. That's why I'll take leave. That I have a travel at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Dinkar, your short, quick point.
Just a couple of points in diagnostics, as Dr. Tirumurugan was telling and extrapolating from that. So many of the kits meant for humans are not calibrated through international standard or checked fit for purpose. So many of the kits we import, for example, we have a Leptospira kit from PanBio made in Australia, and the kind of target population in Australia will be totally different in terms of endemicity of the Leptospira. When you apply it to, say, Tamil Nadu or Chennai, where it's Leptospira is totally endemic, so the results really do not match. We have also seen for ourselves many times being already exposed at your IgM levels or the duration of IgM increases in an endemic country or endemic population will be totally different from, say, a non-endemic or a naive population. So directly applying such kits in a different target population is not at all acceptable or recommended, but that is what we are doing because of lack of indigenous kits or lack of imported kits that are calibrated to the population in our country.
Okay. So I'll just take one more question between Dr. Gill and Dr. Stephen. Dr. Gill, even if those kits which are available, are they accessible and affordable? Straightforward. We can't hear you. Dr. Gill, we can't hear you. Are you muted? Hello? आवाज नहीं आ रहा है. Now you are muted. We are not able to hear you. So just see the technical problem and we'll come back. Professor Stephen?
The answer is they are affordable, sir. Especially Brucella kits, they are affordable. In fact, we used to get some of the Brucella colored antigen and tuberculation antigen and all that from Ranipet, our veterinary institute. So they are very helpful. They used to give us highly positive serum and all that. So I had one MVSC for SARS information, Master of Veterinary Science Microbiology, Dr. Sangeeta. She worked with us for about 1.5 years only, but wonderful job. She used to go there, interact with them, get the materials. So they are government level cheap. Even the kits also, they are affordable, sir, as far as Brucella is concerned. We use the immunocapture technique, BruceCap, generally, sir. But for others, for example, rickettsial one, Leptospira also, we have been using sometimes we have used the PanBio. And from Madras Medical College, they used to tell it is also fairly okay. So there are a lot of private labs in Chennai where they do the MSc for brucellosis and a reasonable cost. And also they identify, in fact, when I went to Chennai for IBMS, Institute of Basic Medical Sciences, Taramani, I requested for page into event and Viva event, and I asked one of my professor who is retired now, Dr. T.S. Sundaraj, he had his own lab. I said, I have not seen leptospira. Then he said, okay, after this Viva, you come with me. He took me there, took the patient sample, and then showed me, he has a dark microscopy, showed me the live leptospira. So what they do is they take the picture and then put it with the report, result like that. So leptospira being endemic, as Dr. Dinakar Raj also said, in Chennai and all, there's a lot of facilities for that purpose. And except for some rickettsial kits, for example, scrub typhus, even the present ones is a little 100 rupees to there, then 400 rupees also there, rapid kits. But for other rickettsia, there is no rapid kit. That is a constraint.
Dr. Gill, are you through?
Yeah, are you hearing me?
Affordable or accessible?
Yeah. Sir, the problem is that the kits are affordable and accessible. But if the sample size number is less for the testing in the most of the laboratories in the medical college, if you find a resources kit for ELISA, it's say 80 samples, 60 samples for do the analysis. And the shelf life of the kits is very less, about 3 months, 6 months. So doing all the tests in one college is not feasible and practical. So in a One Health approach, we have to work on that the affordable tests, which are cheap, can be done at the both places. Otherwise, the specialized tests should be done at the different specialists. If the veterinary is more competent, then it should be done there. If the medical persons are competent, then it should be done. Mainly the shelf life of the kits are very less, and I have come across very many times that the kits is expired and they are testing negative, but the patient has the symptoms and the revised testing, they are getting positive. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's a good point, because we do find that even for sequencing purposes, if the sample size is less, the cost is more. If the sample size is good because they have some 96 wells or something like that, then if you go 96, the cost, I know in case of COVID, they quoted 2,500 per strain. If we had 30, they quoted 5,000 because they have to anyway run the show. So I think I agree these problems. And now that's good that because in practice you do in the clinic, so you know the things better. So thanks, Dr. Gill. I think we'll have one last round about, we talked about education. We talked about exchange of visits between veterinary students and all. We also talked about the status of diagnostic kits. Indigenous is hard to come. The ones which are available has to be validated perfectly. And thirdly, if they are affordable, there should be enough cases to use the kits so that the money is not wasted. We also found that I am not touching AMR in detail because I want to take AMR in a separate way. And the only point I want to ask as a practicing veterinarians, I still am not convinced on the blame that the veterinarians are creating AMR problems or veterinary animals are creating AMR problems. So I think the best one is Gill has been into many of these committees. So do you think the problem is from veterinary or problem is in general?
Sir, this is the point of conflict every time. So I am also the member of FSSAI on the antibiotic residues. So there also we used to say that it is not the veterinarians culprit because we do not have any data. If we can generate the data that the use, we didn't even have what the antibiotics are used. So only the veterinarians to be blamed, because there is one article by using the modeling which shows that India will in future in 2030 will be using almost 30% of the antibiotics in the animal husbandry. It is based on the population of the animals, which is the main basis of blaming the veterinarians. So the population is that the main thing is that we do not use the major antibiotics as a food growth promoter in the large animals. But by the size of the animal, by the weight of the animal, the dose is calculated. So this is causing the misleading. Every time the veterinarians are culprit. Yes, so we can't say the veterinarian. There are the quacks. There are some other persons which are using the antibiotics in the large extent. We need to admit it but not to that the total blame should go to the veterinarian.
Okay, right. So anyway, we'll stop at that point on diagnostics. So we'll take a policy. Now at the higher level, I would like to talk about policy. Is it government policies are adequate enough, or there should be separate intervention on One Health policy? Because many of the institutions, after I did 2019 meeting, that was the first meeting at international level. And subsequently, although it was inaugurated by 4 ministers, Harshvardhan and all those people, and they all said first time you are having this in the country. And then sooner COVID came, then ICMR, ICR, everybody wanted to do One Health. So in our country, One Health means one institute is created, whether it works or not. And somebody gives a network program on already worked out diseases. Like DBT has given a program where they are working on the same type of diseases on seroprevalence. And then similarly, such type of things are taken up. But as a policy for the nation, like, what of points emerged from here? From my own perspective, I have not seen any legislative policy or any policy or, for example, education policy. Everybody is so excited, although it is headed by people who never had an experience in the universities. So what I meant to say is, when the One Health at the policy level, what are the stakeholders that are important, how to sensitize them. What I'll do is I'll take inputs from the project that being experienced by Dr. Oti in his own experience. And then briefly, then I'll go to Dr. Gill, who has been into so many committees. What is the intake and experience from there? Then I'll come back to Dr. Palnivel, who is into these tuberculosis groups. What do they talk about bovine tuberculosis? Is there any reference about bovine tuberculosis? And what type of perception they have on because Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium per se, there are many species. So some of them are pathogenic, some of them are used as adjuvants also. Some of them are used as, so Bovis, the BCG is from actually Bovis. So from on that point of view, are there any thoughts? I'll first go to Dr. Oti. So how did you organize this? This is a very thought process you are just sharing with me. So how good it is, how successful it is, how comfortable people are in the group.
So one of the things which we did is first we mapped the stakeholders for this particular disease model. So from forest department, from veterinary, from medical, from environmental. Then we organized regular meetings with these stakeholders and we elicited their opinion on various aspects, how to diagnose, how to prevent, how to bring in collaboration between different stakeholders in order to understand the problems. So this was a very successful exercise. With the inputs from different stakeholders, we were able to develop a predictive model, how to predict the outbreaks. And also we developed another model for intervention, like how to prevent and how to control the outbreaks. This was a very successful effort which we made during the last 4 or 5 years. The other example is, I don't know how many of you heard of paragonimiasis. Paragonimiasis, which mimics pulmonary symptoms. So the simple thing is that you give the albendazole or other antihelminths, it gets treated, resolved in within 3-4 days. But then people go on treating the patient with anti-tuberculosis drugs, which never give the solution. So that is where the veterinary and even fisheries people have to come together. If I can make one suggestion apart from this model which I developed, that this is
because
a very
it's
wonderful.
all globing, we're putting on the YouTube also.
Yeah, this is a wonderful initiative, Dr. Rao. I should congratulate you. Bringing the veterinarians and medical specialists, interfacing them is very essential, especially when it comes to zoonotic diseases. What I would suggest is we need to identify these diseases which really need interfacing between the medical and veterinary specialists and create awareness among physicians as well as students by some way, either incorporating in the curriculum or holding certain workshops. Thank you. This is what I had to share.
Thanks. Then I'll go to Dr. Palnivel. So you have been dealing with the local government and also the Center for TB Control, particularly on the TB. So how do they look at involvement of any zoonotics in this?
Yeah, the thing is that we are on a mission mode to end TB by 2025. There is a lot of multi-sectoral coordination at the national level and the regional level. But unfortunately, what I should say is all these collaborations are within the human boundaries. I don't think any meeting in any of the national or the state level or the zonal level, we have talked about bovine tuberculosis or picking up those pockets where there is an animal reservoir which is having tuberculosis. So if we really want to talk about eliminate or end TB, I think you should have a broader vision. I think the veterinarians are also should be on board with us. I think the public health specialists, they're already there, but I think their vision is monocular. They have only the human interface in their brain. So I think it's this meeting is an eye opener for me. I'm going to really open this up for our zonal meeting discussions and how effectively we are going to meet that. It's up to the administrative tangles. And that's my take on that.
Thank you very much. So at a project level, at a local, regional level, we have heard the issues. Actually, Dr. Gill, I know that he is listed so many committees. He is very active in these policy making bodies and also very aggressive. So if I'm ready to, allowed to say. So Dr. Gill, what do you think? वैसी तो कोई policy है कि नहीं है?
Sir, policies बनती हैं. There are many policies I have attended, just like from the AMR. I work for the National Action Plan on AMR, in which all the livestock categories I have written on it. But the policies are not implemented. We work, the One Health is, initially I say that 90% is in the meetings or in the some panels. And after that, everybody goes in their own silos. So we need to work jointly for the completion of eradication and control of the diseases, and prevention of emerging diseases, jointly work. So it should not be that this part is medical person, this part is the human person, the veterinarians. But we have to go in the field, work together, collect the sample jointly, and then act on it and work on the risk factor. Just I give you the example. When we work on the brucellosis, I will take 2 minutes, sir. So we first go for what is the economic losses of the brucellosis to show the policymakers. So we found that there are $200 billion loss of rabies loss in the livestock by the brucellosis, and about $650 million for the treatment of brucellosis in the human sector. Similarly, for cysticercosis, about rupees 11 billion is the loss for the cysticercosis, and for the human cysticercosis, it's at 12 billion rupees. This figures goes to the policymaker. Then we say that we should work on it. Then individual programs are made for the control of brucellosis, control of this rabies in the animal husbandry sector. But still the results, when we say the work on what will be the real-time impact of these policies, just we found that if we strictly work on the brucellosis eradication program, it will take about 11 to 12 years to control the brucellosis in the livestock. So while we do making the policy, we should also work on the cost benefit effect of these policies on the ground level. So I will say that both veterinarians and the medical people should work together in the policy making, not by the one-sided when we develop the policies. So, and the one thing I just want to add that joint education of the One Health should be started with. We have initially started the One Health diploma, which is online program for medical, veterinarian, and environment people. And we are very successful that we are medical people, dentists, from the forest persons, officials, and the veterinarians are joining this diploma. So this type of the initiative should be taken to make these policies implemented at the ground level. Thank you.
The last point is from Dinkar. Dinkar, how a veterinary university, because you have been into several roles in the university, and how a veterinary university looks at One Health policies? Does it, does it go in their mind or thinking, or completely not?
No, there's a lot of thinking from our side. We are very clear that you cannot eliminate tuberculosis without eliminating bovine tuberculosis, or you cannot eliminate rabies in humans without eliminating rabies in dogs. So from our side, I think we are very clear on that. I think the human people have to start opening up more, and requires much more sensitization, and our support would be mostly in the diagnostic part. And also each species of human versus animal is going to act as a sentinel for others. So if we look at, say, Brucella antibodies in bovine, so naturally the people associated with that are likely to have the disease. Or if you see bovine tuberculosis, the farm workers should be screened, and they're more likely to have human tuberculosis. So I think, there should be a more than a collaboration. I would suggest personally there should be a convergence. People are easier if they work under a same head. Have a multidisciplinary unit where all doctors and engineers probably and human and veterinarian work together under the same leadership. So it's much easier that way rather than collaborating from individual institution. But we are really clear that for achieving the targets in humans of disease eradication, definitely the zoonotic context has to be controlled.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. Is there any pressing point, last point by anybody? Yes, Dr. Pal.
It's nice that we have been talking so much about infectious diseases and so on, viruses, bacteria. I think these have been centuries old. But I think the future generation, the children of the future should think there are non-communicable diseases which have sharing platforms between the veterinary and thing, especially like cancer, antimicrobial resistance, and lifestyle diseases. Even heart diseases seem to share some things between canines and human beings, even diabetes, and even airway diseases for that matter. And the extreme of the thing, even obstructive sleep apnea has been shown to be in dogs. So we have perfect models of all these diseases between humans, and I think this platform, we should make us use of opportunity to develop definite collaborations between the other team and us.
Exactly. I mean, in fact, the time is not up. Time is up. Otherwise, we have a National Canine Health Program. I think Dr. Gill is also heading that program in the university. And a very interesting thing, as you rightly said, I was the one who launched that program. At that time when I had a dream to develop Indian pedigree, for the companion dogs. Then one of the colleagues of Dr. Gill is a nutrition guy. He first surveyed in Punjab, what is the feed that they give for the companion animals? Maybe he can tell, I think, what is that they usually give?
So there is a lot of the variations in the feed. Some people only give the commercial feeds which are available, and it was going to lead them the heart disease, kidney disease, and other disease. But the persons who are giving the indigenous feeds, they are giving the fruits, some only fruits, some vegetables. So when we tested that the feed samples, we found that about only 10% people are giving the balanced feed. 90% are giving imbalance. So there is clear-cut divide with the vegetarians and the non-vegetarian feeds. So then we have own indigenous feed, which is almost half of the cost of the commercial feed.
So they are given milk, roti, and sabji as the humans eat, like rasam, sambar here. you know, they are also used to this type of food.
Laddu, jalebi.
Jalebi. Jalebi also.
Yeah. Whatever the humans are feeding, they are preparing in their kitchen, the same
Whatever they are eating, they are feeding that one. And secondly, I know in the clinic in Ludhiana Veterinary Hospital, many of the dogs come with a lot of obesity because of this. And then there are many diabetic cases, both in Thanavasu and also in, it's a very common diabetes. Cancer is very prominent. I think these are now become a big study models for the development of drugs for both, actually. I think the message for all of you is that, yes, chronic diseases are also important in terms of animal and human interface. We will end there. Actually, I don't want to conclude, that is not my style, because each one has contributed some very significant inputs. Rather than putting them in a text, I would not want to dilute any points that you have emphatically said. That is how I usually don't conclude any meeting, because it's an ongoing dialogue. We just started. Actually, you see, there is a lot of gap holes. If I just touch AMR, I will go for 2 hours of discussion. If I touch the stakeholder and policies, and then what Dr. Roti was telling, it cannot itself is a 1 hour topic. So any of these things can go on. Diagnostics could be a 1 hour debate, actually. So therefore, I don't want to touch education and training is another area which is very difficult, because policy is too difficult. Unless we make our own One Health policy and put it on the website, if you want to see, at least reduce their writing skills and effort, so that we all together put, this is one of the idea we am getting. We are already part of Global Alliance for Pandemic Preparedness, and this will be also a part of that activity. So there is nothing harm in putting a draft One Health policy in consultation with all of you, and then globally, the people who have joined, so that any country or anybody, they want to develop any policy, the draft is already ready. They can localize it as per their needs. So thank you very much for your participation. And then I am very, this was one of my dreams, to bring people together, which never materialized in 35 years. And I'm very thankful to each one of you and those students and the faculty who are sitting and patiently listening to this. We are very much enriched and value added. Thank you very much to all of you, online and physically. Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
There was a poster competition, and in which 2-3 people have won. I think whoever is the senior here, maybe Dr. Roti is senior, or you are senior, Dr. Roti. So maybe it can be given. They are there. Read out the names.
Yes, Kavita, MSc Nursing, first year. Mrs. Gayatri, MSc Nursing. Mr. R. Vijay, MSc Nursing, first year. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rao, personally. Thank you very much.